Hello friends, Tal here, and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be handling something that honestly has kind of been haunting my dreams recently. And it's a bit of a nightmare, but a nightmare in a good way. We're going to be talking about my UI, and most importantly, we're going to be talking about my WeakAuras. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys. It drives me a little crazy getting all the comments on every single video, always asking about my WeakAuras, asking for about my UI, all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be the definitive guide. I'm going to make a short, well, not a short guide, but I'm going to make a guide about how I make my WeakAuras. It's going to be very simple. You have to understand something. I don't know how to do crazy coding on WeakAuras. I do very simple, very basic WeakAuras that fit my purposes. And anything more advanced, I go out and I look for. And I'm going to be showing you my Monk's WeakAuras specifically because it has a mix of those different things. Now basically what you can expect here is I'm going to be going over how to make the WeakAuras to track various different things, how I make groups for them, how I put them in, aesthetically pleasing areas, and finally you will have a link in the description. If all you care about is this, just know there's a link in the description for every single WeakAura I use on all of my tanks. I think some people have even asked for my Windwalker one, so I'll go ahead and share that as well. Just know that from this point on, this is it. This is the definitive guide to my WeakAuras and basically my UI. So please, guys in my community, I would really appreciate this. If you guys from this point on see any comments in any of my videos saying, what's your UI, what WeakAuras, do you have a link to it? If you guys could be so kind as to share the link to this video in the future so that everyone can just come right back and see how it's done, see what I do. And most people, they're just going to want to get the link in the description and, get out of here. They don't want to make their own. And that's perfectly fine, and that's why I'm going to put it in the description. But guys, I'm relying on you, my community, to go ahead and help me out by making sure that anyone from this point on in the future, they ask for my WeakAuras, they ask for my UI, you link them this video, do me a solid please, I'd appreciate it greatly. So first of all, I'm going to go over really quickly what I do with my UI, because that's a question that I get a lot of the time. So for the most part, what you see and how all my add-ons are skinned is an add-on called ElvUI. You have to download this from their website. Now, the way that I have it set up here, essentially when you go through the startup menu, I chose a tank because I'm a tank, and then I basically just divide my action bars into these two pillars here. Why? Because I use a Razor Naga. This is basically the mapped out my buttons, and having it in this order, this 3x4 grid, it helps my brain remember where the buttons are. It's just the way that I'm wired. And then everything else that's more utility I have here on these smaller grids, just kind of rectangular, and then I have my mounts and other shenanigan-y bullshit up here. Basically, that's what I use for my main sort of aesthetic, the way that I use my UI and everything. It's not hard to get this set up. You basically, honestly, you just click tank, and then you just move stuff around. If you want to see something a little bit more specific, toggle anchors. There you go. If you need to pause the video, you can see exactly where everything is placed. My loss of control icons in the middle, player frame, cast bars, class bar, although that barely ever shows up, target to target frame, my different bars, my party frames, focus frame, my raid frames, all that kind of stuff. Boom. There you go. You got it. And then as far as other add-ons that I use, if we go ahead and look at them, Addy Bags is my bag add-on. Advanced interface options, I recommend everyone go ahead and download this. This brings back options that Blizzard took away in Legion. There's a lot of things that you can't turn off or on anymore. This brings some of those back. And specifically to go ahead and access them, go to add-ons, advanced interface. And you can see them all in here. So there you go. Highly recommend that add-on specifically to bring back some options. Angry Assignments is for rating. Auctionator is one of my auction house add-ons. Click is for specific other things, so just go ahead and mouse over. Compact Runes is what I use on my DK. Deja Character Stats is another add-on I highly recommend because it brings back options to your character select screen. It shows you more of your stats that, again, Blizzard has taken away in Legion in the hopes of simplifying how it looks. EPGP Loot Master is just how my guild does loot. Exorcist Raid Tools for raiding. Escar Assist for raiding. Master Plans for Garrison. Mogget is because I'm a Transmog Fiend. Maz Full World Map. It gives you some options to your world map and lets you see like through the fog of war. There's also those options in LVOI. You do not need this. I just have it because for some things I like it to be different. Postal is my mailbox add-on. Saved instances specifically lets me know what I'm saved to on each of my characters, and I can see what I need to get on each of them. Highly recommend it. Of course, Simple Cheese, Simple Holy Power just tracks those resources. Specifically when I You know, when Brewmasters used to have chi, that was really good for that. Right now I just use it for Windwalker. Skada is my DPS meter of choice. I also use it for threat, I use it for healing, I use it for interrupts, all that kind of stuff. WeakAuras, of course, is my bread and butter. It's going to be talking about all my auras. We're going to get into that right now. Trade Skill Masters for just making some gold. Add-on skins, LVY, config, LVY Shadow and Light. It's my LVY packet that I use. Cross Gambling when I feel like losing all my money. DBM is my raid add-on of choice. And there you go. So that's the quick overview of my add-on choices. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into the meat of this video, and that is how to make simple, easy WeakAuras. So there you go. When I make my WeakAuras, I have a pretty standard philosophy when I'm doing them. I want everything to be centered around my character, but not on my character. So I use it as, if you look at it as a grid, up and down, X and Y axis, 0, 0 would be my character, and everything is a little bit off to the side. So as you can see, for things such as my purifying brew, not my purifying brew, but my iron skin brew, when it's up, I have that tracked here, and I specifically go and I try to make sure that it is off center from X and then Y. So I have it basically perfectly in the middle of the screen, but centered off to the right, to the left. And that's kind of how I work. It's an aesthetic thing for me. It works in my brain, and it helps me out. That's how I work. So, as far as how I make WeakAuras, if we go ahead and queue this up, we're going to make a new WeakAura that's going to track our Tiger's Lust. Now for that, what I always do is I like to have an icon. I work best of icons. It helps you remember what icons look like. And we're going to go ahead and call this Tiger's Lust Ready. So, if we go over to my Brewmaster skills, I basically make, when I'm using specifically trying to figure out spells that I need to use on cooldown, I use ready and time, ready and time, ready and time for everything. When I'm tracking a specific thing that's recharging and that has multiple charges, I use healing elixir up. And I'll go ahead and explain some of those differences right now. But if we look here at Tiger's Lust ready, it's in the middle of our screen. The first thing I do is I go over to trigger, I go over to aura, because it's an aura on myself, and if I want to track specifically, like if it's on me, I would go ahead and do aura. If I'm trying to track the cooldown, you'd go over to status, and then cooldown progress spell. And then in here you would type out Tiger's Lust. So that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Probably because you have to use correct punctuation. There you go. You have to put in that little comma. Additionally, you can actually mouse over the spell. If you're using LVY, it tells you the spell ID. You can see right there that it's 116841. You could type that in there to get a more exact thing. If you try typing it in, there's some spells and talents and trinkets. You can type in the exact wording and it won't work, and it's going to drive you insane. So you just go ahead and mouse over the spell ID and you put it in there. And then you can see that you can have it be showing specifically when you have a couple of seconds left, when there's a charge, when it's on cooldown, all that kind of stuff. Basically, I want it to show when it's not on cooldown because I want to see when my Tiger's Lust is ready to be used. So then I would go over to load, and I would basically choose if I want it to load only in combat, which is why when you see me here when I'm just idle, you don't see any of my WeakAuras. Or you can choose to have it load specifically when you are, for example, on a monk. And then you can even choose a talent specialization, or even if you specifically choose that talent. Usually those give you names of things. It kind of bugs out every once in a while, but basically you'd find Tiger's Lust in here, you click it, and they would only show when you have selected Tiger's Lust as your talent. Now, why would you want to specify things such as class and such as spec? Because if you don't specify things, all of the WeakAuras will load on every single character. You have to understand something. It can become a very highly intensive add-on if you have all these WeakAuras loading. I could have each of my tank WeakAuras load on every single character, and they wouldn't necessarily show because they don't have access to the spells. but the game would be loading it and it would be running in the background, potentially bogging down my system, potentially bogging down what I'm doing in the game, giving me some FPS issues, giving me some frame rate issues, lagging out, things like that. So you don't want it to load all the time. You want it to load specifically when you do, when you're on the right class, when you have the right talent, all that kind of stuff. So now that we see Tiger's Lust ready, we're going to have it load always because I want to use it for the purpose of this demonstration. I want to make sure that I'm using it and it's being shown. And now we go over to display. This is just going to show when it's ready. It does not have charges, so I don't really care about stacks. It doesn't have a certain amount of time that it lasts, so this number down here in the corner is not really going to matter. But you can see that it's there in the middle of my screen, and then if I use Tiger's Lust, it is gone. The Tiger's Lust has like a, let's see, 30-second cooldown, so it won't be showing up again for 30 seconds, and in that meantime, I can go ahead and do another thing. We go to WeakAuras again. Now, what I like to do is I like to copy paste. For all my WeakAuras, it's basically only difficult to get the very first few ones out. After that, it's a breeze. But let me go ahead and show you. 2 seconds, 1 second, boom, it's back up. So making the very first WeakAura is the hard part, making the template, essentially. What I like to do from that point on is I basically duplicate, and then I call it Tiger's Lust Time. Now, it's tracking Tiger's Lust. It's loading when I'm a monk. But I want it to only show up when the spell is on cooldown. So what am I going to do? Show when it's on cooldown. And then I don't want it to show the entire time that it's taking down. I want it to show when it has about, when it's less than or equal to 5 seconds. Because I want to know ahead of time when this is going to come off cooldown so I can start thinking about it, especially if it's something rotational like Keg Smash. I want to know a couple of seconds before so that I have a free global cooldown, and if, for example, an ad pack is going to spawn in 6 seconds and my Keg Smash comes off cooldown in 5 seconds, I don't want to mindlessly press Keg Smash because, oh my god, I have to put it on cooldown. No. You have a 1 second variation, you wait for the ads to spawn, you smash the Mo of Keg Smash. It's those kinds of decision-making processes that are very small and minor, and you might think they don't matter. But over the course of an entire fight, and honestly over the course of a raid, of you doing those types of decisions all the time, it's going to make a big difference. So I wanted to show when there's 5 seconds left. And I wanted to show the cooldown. Now if you can see here, it's going to show the cooldown this way. And it's very specific that I'm pointing this out because when you see this right here, Tiger's Lust. Okay, so I'm running around Tiger's Lust. There's about 25 seconds that's going to be up, and it should be showing once this comes down to 5 seconds. Now the reason I want to very much point out that whole cooldown thing is because it's an aesthetic choice, but I think it also helps put this in your brain that something is coming off of cooldown. So as you can see here, 5 seconds is starting to show, but it's all dark and it's full in there. But then it becomes all light. What I like to do, and again this is very much a personal choice, is I like to have this be inverse. So that way when it's finished cooling down, you can actually see it like that. So when it fills up, it's bright, it's yellow, it transitions very nicely into the full effect, and you can see that your cooldown is off, your spell is off cooldown, and you can use it. And we're going to go ahead and demonstrate that one more time here with Tiger's Lust. And it should come off cooldown and just, be the icon again. Perfect. That's the simplest way that I track my spell cooldowns. I use a ready and I use a time. It's 2 WeakAuras that together let me know when something is off cooldown and when something is almost ready to go. And that's basically how I use all my decision making processes for my rotational abilities. As you can see, all of the abilities here, my skills, which is my rotational stuff, certain talents that I take, it works under that same philosophy. Keg Smash ready, Keg Smash time. Blackout ready, Blackout time. Breath of Fire ready, Breath of Fire time. Now specifically when I'm doing recharge things like Healing Elixir, like Shield Block, like Demon Spikes for Vengeance when they come out, I do it a little bit differently. I do a bit of a combination. So I still have cooldown, and honestly I should have inverse up as well, but I also make sure that this says stacks. I make sure that the button or the number at the bottom right, is big enough that I can keep an eye on it and see how many charges of this that I have. And when I go to trigger, I have it always show. Now why do I do that? If we go ahead and pop into combat real quick. Let's just fly over to our training dummy. Pop into combat. You're going to see that I have this right here. This is the healing elixir. This is the only one of my WeakAuras here, of my main spells, that it works under this philosophy. When I use it, it's going to show that it's on cooldown, but it's also going to show me I still have another charge. That's for me to keep in mind that I'm tracking two things at once. And the numbers do intersect, and it can be a little bit annoying when you first see it. But for me, my brain, aesthetically speaking, I'm able to very clearly see there, I have another charge, and I have something that's going to be coming off cooldown in 10 seconds. And if I use the other one, no number appears. I know that I don't have a charge available to me, and I have to wait the 3 seconds that are still left to get at least one charge, and it's going to immediately go back into the 30 seconds because the second one is recharging. This is very useful for abilities that you always want to have at least one of the charges on cooldown. Why? Because if not, you're losing out on potential DPS, on potential uses of the spell, things of that nature. And just to demonstrate one more time, if I use Blackout Strike, boom, I have it set to show me essentially under 3 seconds, and the spell's cooldown is less than 3 seconds, so it shows immediately. But if I do something like Breath of Fire, you can see that it has disappeared, and it's going to be coming back very soon. When it's under 3 seconds, it starts to show there, and that is enough time for me to put in my head, I need to remember that this is coming off cooldown, I need to use this appropriately, don't waste it if there's not AoE. That's basically how I go. The other thing that you'll notice is I have a bar here in the middle tracking my energy. Now the way to do that is you actually create a progress bar, and when you create the progress bar, you're going to be wanting to do, I'd like aluminum as my texture of choice. You can change the bar color, of course, depending on whatever it is that you're trying to track. But basically, what you want to trigger is a status, aura, custom event status. I do not do custom because, again, I don't have the knowledge to work with Lua and all that stuff. So I do status, power, player, energy. That means that I'm tracking a power, which can be action usable, alternate power, big witch timer, cast, conditions, power, stance, swing, all these different things you could track. Out of all of those, I'm tracking it on myself, so I'm only looking at my character. And then I'm tracking out of mana, rage, focus, energy, combo points, all that, I'm tracking energy. That's what I want to know. And then specifically, I'm a monk, I want to see it when I'm a monk. And I use energy in all my different Windwalker and Brewmaster, so I'm tracking it on both of those. And that's basically how you track that right there. If, for example, I was going to be tracking a debuff on an enemy, what I would want to go ahead and do is, if you see brew charges, right? So brew charges, I'm tracking the charges of my purifying brew. And what I do there is I have chosen that I want to track the status, cooldown, progress of Purifying Brew. Now, the reason I use Purifying Brew is because it has a different icon than Ironskin Brew. And the icon that I use for Ironskin Brew is when I actually have it up. So if you see, if we're going to go ahead and jump back into combat, you see my brew charges here. I use Ironskin Brew, and now it's showing me the recharge on that, but it's also showing me how long I have for Ironskin Brew to stay up. Now that is going to be an aura and a buff on myself. Let's jump out of combat here real quick. If you go here to brew charges and then Ironskin Brew, you'll see that it's aura. It's the aura name of 215479 because when I put the name in, it wasn't working out. And I'm specifically tracking it on myself, the player, and it is a buff. And then I just want to see the time. If you want to track a debuff, it's the same thing. You would just choose either yourself or the target, whatever debuff you're trying to find, and then you would put debuff. And that's how you can track when you put things on the enemy, like for example dots if you're a caster, or specifically if you want to talk tanks, if you're trying to track your thrash stacks on an enemy target, if you're trying to track your disease as a blood DK on the enemy target, you would go ahead and do that. And it's really just a matter of putting in the name, making sure that you're tracking it on the right person, either yourself or the enemy, and just figuring out when you want it to show up. Do you want it to show all the time? Do you want it to show when you have less than 5 seconds left on it so you can react to it and keep your screen clean? That's basically the philosophy that I use with my WeakAuras. I want my screen to be clean. I don't want this entire mess of stuff. I want all these things to be mostly gone so that there's nothing down here and everything around is basically my upkeep and what I'm trying to keep track of. So the other thing that I want to go ahead and talk about is trinkets. Now with trinkets specifically, the only one that I'm currently been tracking is the Mirror of the Blade Master. I use the exact same thing that I do for spells. I use status, cooldown, progress, item, and I put Mirror of the Blade Master. You can see that I have 2 WeakAuras. It's the same thing. It's basically showing me, hey, you can use Mirror. Hey, Mirror's coming up in 3 seconds. And that way I have whatever keybind I have for Mirror of the Blade Master. I go ahead and use it. I know to keep it in mind. I know to track it. And that's the easiest way to track trinkets, specific ones. You can just put the item name in there because it's cooldown, progress, item. The last thing that I want to talk about here is groups. Now obviously you can see that my skills are all in what's called a group. They're all grouped up together. They all appear in the exact same area. It's a nice little rectangle bar, and it's a nice way to put things together. So if we go back to our Tiger's Lust, let's go ahead and make a group for utility. So basically go over to dynamic group. Remember, I basically only use dynamic group, icon, and progress bar. Those are the only 3 that I personally use. I don't care for models. I don't really care for text too much. I don't want custom textures. I want the icon of what it is I'm using because it registers better in my mind. So if I go over to dynamic group, I'm going to call it utility. I'm going to leave it like that. So there's my dynamic group, utility. Now what you want to do is you click Tiger's Lust ready, boom, and you put it in utility. Tiger's Lust time, boom, and you put it in utility. Now for the sake of not driving myself crazy, let's go ahead and move utility over here somewhere so it's not in the middle of my screen. So now you're going to see that if you press the plus button, you have these 2 WeakAuras here in this utility group. And whatever changes you make to the utility group affect all the WeakAuras in that group. You can change their size. You can change the way that this goes, either up or down. I personally am preferring horizontal, so I always go centered horizontal. But let's just for the sake of this, let's do centered vertical. So it's going to show up as a big bar going up and down, showing me all my utility and how much of a time I have left for each of them. I like to align it in the center. I like putting the spacing as 3 personally. I like a little bit of space in between because I don't want them literally on top of each other. I don't mess with the border. I don't mess with the background. And the X and Y offset, of course, you know that I'm a little bit of a nut. So I like having it literally as centered and as organized as possible. I'm not a very organized person in my life, but I need it to be organized when I'm playing a game because I like the cleanness of it. Sometimes you'll see when I'm raiding, there's a bunch of things all over the place and there's words here and words there. But to me, it's like a controlled chaos and I am able to thrive in it. If you go to display, it's going to then show you a couple of options that are independent on the WeakAuras themselves. But the important thing is you can actually choose the size of these icons. If you want to make them small, if you want to make them big. We're going to leave them big for the purpose of the video because it's a demonstration. And then of course you can still do the loads. It's going to load on the monk, especially because I already added these 2 WeakAuras and they load on the monk. So it has inherited that and made it so this is only going to load when I am on my monk. Now let's add some more spells to it. I told you before, I am a fan of copy paste. Once you make the template WeakAuras, all you got to do is duplicate. Let's call this one, let's call it Transcendence. Ready? Transcendence. Mistype that, I'm sure. Time. And then I just move it down. So Tiger's Lust, Transcendence, Transcendence. And all you got to do is go over to Trigger, Transcendence. Oh, I misspelled the shit out of that. Okay, I'm bad at spelling. Think you all know that. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at spelling. Boom, there you go. And just so I don't drive myself a little bit crazy, Copy paste that as well. So now, if you click this little eyeball, you can actually see everything that's there. I'm tracking Tiger's Lust, and I'm tracking the cooldown of Transcendence. You could do that for Transcendence Transfer. You can do that with Zen Meditation. I could do that with Paralysis if I so cared about it. But you can see there that I have my 2 utilities, and I can track Tiger's Lust. I can put my clone down there in the air because I'm just cool like a monk like that. And you'll see that my Transcendence is coming off cooldown, so I can go ahead and use it again whenever I want. And you will notice that LVUI is also skinning what these icons look like. It's one of the other reasons I love LUI. It skins everything to an aesthetic that matches each other. So these icons look classy. They look nice. I like it. I'm personally a big fan of it. So we went ahead and went over buffs, debuffs, spells, groups, and trinkets. Again, I make very, very basic WeakAuras. I don't have the knowledge to make super crazy in-depth ones. And I bring that up because I have 2 super crazy in-depth ones. I have a stagger WeakAura and a WeakAura that tracks my expel harm. The expel harm one is tracking how many Gift of the Ox orbs are around me, so that when I press expel harm, I know how many orbs I'm absorbing and healing myself for. The reason I say it's crazy is because on my Vengeance Demon Hunter, I have a buff on me that says how many soul fragments are around me. So it's very easy to make something to track that. But for Expel Harm, there's no buff on you that tells you the orbs. And for Stagger, the add-on that I used to have that I actually got from Sunnier's Art of War back in MOP that has worked this entire time, that's not really working out anymore. So I have a new Stagger for that. And the reason I say that is you're not always going to be able to make a WeakAura the exact way that you want. What I do is I go to MMO Champion. MMO Champion, you guys are going to hear me say this in a lot of my videos, but it's basically where I go whenever I want to find specific things. If I go through the forums, I learn a lot about what people are talking about at the moment. I go ahead and go into the specifically the WeakAura threads that each class, each spec, each little section of the community has to themselves, and I go through and I just run along and see what I can find, what I like. And that's where the import option comes in handy. What you're able to do is you go to new, you press import, you can paste in their paste bins just the same way that I'm about to paste mine into the description of this video. So you guys can have the exact same things that I grabbed in the exact same position on your screen. And if you don't like them in that position because for whatever reason it's not fitting your UI, you don't have UI, maybe you have other things that you're already tracking, it's very easy to just click on, for example, utility, make sure it's actually showing, and you just move it around wherever the hell you want. But that's pretty much all I really wanted to go ahead and go over. Again, just to recap, we talked about how to make specific WeakAuras for buffs on yourself, debuffs on an enemy target or on yourself. We talked about how to track things such as spell cooldowns. Procs even can be tracked in the same way because procs is a buff on yourself. You can use it to do charged abilities like healing elixirs or roll. You could do it to track trinket cooldowns, spell cooldowns, and anything that's really, really advanced. It's pretty easy to just go ahead and Google or look in through MMO Champion to find it. Now, I hope this video has helped you guys. It's not super crazy in depth. It's not really going through all the crazy, ridiculous amount of options that are available in LBUI. You notice I didn't even choose actions or animations or any of that. I don't mess with that. I don't need that to get my attention. I don't do audio cues to get my attention. I don't like any of that. I like very clean, very simple things. And that's why I even have a WeakAura that specifically tracks my opponent's cast bar because I want to make sure I'm interrupting the right thing. And you can see here that it really shows through my UI that I like clean things. I like simplistic things. And anything that I have to have that's more advanced, I go ahead and find. So that's it for the video, guys. Again, I ask you as a community, please, if anyone ever asks again for my UI video or what add-ons I use or what my WeakAuras are, please go ahead and link them to this video. I hope it's comprehensive enough for them. And of course, once more, in the description, every single WeakAura for all of my tanks, it will be there. It's going to have a short description of what it tracks and a link to the paste bin. What it tracks, link to the paste bin. I recommend you guys make your own. Personally speaking, I think it's much better for customization, and because what I might think is important to track, you might not think is important to track. You have to keep in mind something like Blackout Strike. You use it like every other ability. So once you get into the rhythm, you don't really need to know what the cooldown is for. It's less than 3 seconds. You don't really have to track that. And if you don't want to track, for example, your brew charges like I did, and you want to track them down here, that's another option that you have. That's why I like making my own. But if you guys really, really liked it, and it looks like a lot of you do, that's why I went ahead and made this video for you. So anyways, guys, I want you all to know that I appreciate the support. I appreciate the love. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal recently. All the support on Patreon, all the support when I stream, the support on my videos. You guys are fantastic, and I really appreciate it. If you like this video, go ahead and drop it a like. Subscribe to the channel to see some more. And I personally hope you all have a fantastic day. Demon Hunters are August 9th. I'm super freaking excited. Demon Invasions as well. Expect the stream, expect a couple videos, and I can't wait for Legion to come out because I'm having a ton of fun for the first time in months in World of Warcraft. See you guys around.